All right, hello and welcome everyone to another weekly edition of Stock Market Mutterings. This is for the week beginning on April 15th. Just saying those words, man, it stings, it stacks, it's painful. Hey, but all we can do is just work hard. Got to make this back and continue to prosper. So let's take a look at some of this stuff, figure out where we're going to go here this week, give you a few ideas, and hopefully that'll make you guys some money. So, like I said last week, I didn't see anything that was coming on the horizon that was going to alter the course of this market. It seems destined to do all-time highs, but the way that it's doing it is just kind of slow and kind of like moseying around a little bit. And maybe as we start to approach this week, we got some bigger names that's going to be talking about earnings. That could maybe change some of the tempo here, but for right now, it is what it is until it no longer is. And I think we're still going to see that. We're just within a few points here. So one day could easily get to all-time highs, and then I guess we'll just go from there. We'll see if we've got enough to move through that, or that does become resistance. And again, you just cannot discount the rally from Christmas Eve. You know, back then it was just like this was over. We had this big correction, and you kind of expected a bounce, but one that took you all the way back up here. I mean, what an amazing bounce, and who knows where we go from here. So, but as we look at it, I still think that's going to be happening unless something comes out to really start putting the pressure on this market. I don't know the exact number, but maybe you're like 293 and some change there with all-time highs. I would expect, you know, like I said, you're 3 points within that. One good day will get you there. So you've already broken out of range here on Friday, and that just seems to be the way it is. Even though it's melting, even though it's slow, kind of wanted to just get it over with, but that's the way it is right now. In the case that we do see some selling, I wouldn't expect anything aggressive unless we start trading under 285. I mean, but right now over the last week or so, we've yet to see any significant pullback whatsoever, or one that's stuck. So until that, you know, just start looking at moving averages down the line. That's my market analysis. It just seems like it's destined to do that. Now, we do have some good names here coming up, and we're starting to enter earnings season, which is like my favorite seasons out of the year, because there's always some great opportunities. It increases the volatility, and I really like trading through that time. We've got to look at this Netflix here, because this could be a kind of I think it's a critical area, excuse me. Most of you probably already know the news, but Disney came out and announced they're going to have a subscription service starting at like $6.99 a month. And that started this whole thing. If you look at Disney, DIS, it went like vertical on Friday. So they were just opposites of each other. Disney's going vertical and everyone's bailing on Netflix. The other thing to look at Netflix here is it's starting to approach, it closed right at a very critical level on the daily chart. So outside of the news, if you're starting to look at technical analysis, you're down at some support at the daily, and then your next area is probably this 342. So there's still a lot more downside that can happen for this name. That you could see that on Monday, a little bit more continuation, because you really didn't get a whole much. You got one little bounce intraday there on Friday and not much interest after that. In fact, it sold all the way back down to lows. But you have earnings here. I believe this is, it's going to be after market there on Monday. So pay close attention to this. Last time they had earnings, it wasn't perceived that well. So if you combine that with the news, you might see something here. You know what I'm saying. You might see a pretty hefty pullback. This thing hasn't done a whole lot of anything, just back and forth trading pretty much since February. You know, it's gone up and down, yes, but it's pretty much, if you bought it on the 1st of February and held on to it, you'd probably be about break even. But watch this thing. I'm interested to see how earnings are going to have an impact after this Disney news and so on. And maybe this thing ends up really getting hit, or maybe it just brushes it off and it goes higher. But Netflix is definitely on the radar here. But more importantly, I'm not going to hold it through earnings, but I just want to watch and see how it handles its earnings. Now, another one here to take a look at is WDAY. These little thin beta names like Shop, Twilio, I know there's a ton of other ones. It's just relentless in their pursuit to go higher. Like every single moment they get a chance, these things find a way to go higher. Now, a lot of these other kind of cloud names, they took a beating last week. I actually brought these up, and I thought we might start the week out selling down a little bit more into what I thought would be a better level to get long. But that's all you got. You got one day, and then it spent the rest of the week going up and up and up and up, and every dip getting bought, and so on. But now you're back to here, back to this area on this chart where it struggled with for a little while, and that's this 196.20s to 197s. It's been kind of wrestling with that area since the 20th of March. So if you're able to just get through that level and do that on volume, and everything stays the way it is in the market with no surprises, then I think you're going to see highs on this one too. It's going to retrace back to 200 and possibly move through 200. But again, this one, I've talked about Twillo before. I've talked about Shop before. Maybe you can even put Spot. I wouldn't put, not Spot. It doesn't have that type of ability right now, but they just don't go down. I mean, yeah, they go down, but they just keep getting bought back up. Like you look at Twillo here intraday on Friday, you know, it's like you get down in here in a flush and it just doesn't last long. It's just right back up to damn near green. I think it did close slightly green. I mean, they just refuse to go down right now. At some point, those will change. But watch this WDAY. Oh, yeah, another one right here. I want to put this one on the watch, too, is iRobot. This is another one of these. Now, they've got earnings coming up here next week, but you got somewhat of a double top setting up here on the daily. And normally when I see a double top or I see one of these really strong stocks with all of these greens, I mean, look what this thing did back here in February. I normally want to short that, but really since the beginning of this year, it's been hard to do that because the market just does not want to give anything up. You get these small, brief periods where you're shown a few hands that, okay, we want to see some selling, or you see some technical damage done on a chart, but then it immediately finds some way to reverse itself. So it's really been that kind of a thing where you change the way you look at this market for right now because every dip is getting bought. These stocks that go down for whatever reasons, they find ways to wiggle back higher. And that's the trade right now. If anything kind of pulls back or bases early in the morning, you're normally seeing it go higher more often than it goes lower. So this iRobot is another good one. So you got two of those, WDAY and iRobot, the thin bait as we like to call them. I think you're going to see those just continue to stay up. I would be looking for dips to buy those. Maybe iRobot's a little bit more of a swing trade, but you know, like I said, I would actually add Twillo to that list and Shop. Now let's get to some thicker beta. FB. I talk about this one a lot. You know, FB, Nvidia, Netflix, sort of my thing, and BABA. It's still flagging here on the daily. The thing is, it wasn't a good week for this as far as day trades. You weren't able to really get solid moves out of this. You see this whole week, it's just kind of been a little bit choppy, and it's still flagging here on the daily. It's consolidating and setting up. Looks like it wants to break out and start working its way towards 200 again. But it hasn't really done much this week. It wasn't the week for that. Now, a week before, you got some really nice upward movement coming out of this range, but for the most part, nothing here. They have earnings coming up next week as well, I believe it is. Yeah, I think so. So, you know, we'll see how that works out. It's still viable, at least for right now. So keep Facebook on. I think if it clears that level, you might see it work its way up to like at least 187 or into this gap over here. And then BABA. I mentioned BABA just a second ago. I'm going to put King BABA back on the list here. It's right. I mean, it closed right up there today. And this one actually worked out both directions in the trade room on Friday. It was a nice breakout long early, but then it faded, you know. Once it took off here, it kind of put in a nice fade back into support and then bounced back up. I mean, it's had good action here in both directions, both up and down. So it gives you the opportunity to trade this both ways. So we'll see. That's it, man. Let's just go with that right now. So here's what I want you to think about. I still feel the market's going to try to get to all-time highs and possibly trade through that. I feel it's come too far to just give up right now. Now, it may do that, but I think you're going to have to see a couple of other things happen here before a situation like that takes place, because it seems like as we're trading right now, the volume is anemic across the board, and you're just not, it's almost like you're trading in through the summertime every day of the week right now. And it's just these tiny moves, tiny moves, tiny moves. Sure, that will change at some point, but I feel like until you see a sell-off that can actually stick and gain some momentum to the downside, then we can start talking about maybe reaching the 20 or the 50 moving average on the daily chart, or working our way down to the 200 or something like that. But for right now, that's the way it works. The trades that seem to be working in that type of environment is anything that pulls back, like a BABA in the morning, or an NVIDIA, or prior to Friday, Netflix, or something that drifts into a support zone. More often than not, will bounce off of the support zone and like slowly work its way from red to green, versus just continuing to accelerate downwards over and over. So we'll see how this plays out. Again, I would watch Netflix there. That earnings might set a tempo for the remainder of the FANG names. We're just going to have to see how it plays out there on Monday. But as always, if you guys need help with that, need some help with that trading, want a little bit more direction, take a moment, visit thelincolnlist.com, click on the Trade Room tab. Until next week, trade them well. Talk to you then.